It is day number 18, I believe. Friday morning. Fairly cool out. Actually have a layer on today for the first time in over a week and a half. I am headed out of Cedars of Lebanon State Park. Really expensive state park. $55 for me, not using electricity, water, sewer. This is crazy for a piece of dirt. I am headed to the Hermitage, Jackson's Hermitage, which is about 37 minutes away, and they open at 9 o'clock. And then I'm heading up to Fort Donelson, which is where Ulysses S. Grant gained his moniker. It stuck with him the rest of his life. Explain that a little bit later. No clouds in the sky, humidity's down. Temperature today, I think it's only supposed to get up to 70 degrees, so a very different change in weather from what I've been experiencing since I left Virginia. I was able to make a reservation at the state park up in Kentucky, just north of the Tennessee border. Half the price of what it was costing here in Tennessee. Everything is lush and green. When I left Connecticut, the trees weren't even budding. The Hermitage, Andrew Jackson's home of the people's president. It's a big learning experience for me. I don't know a lot about Andrew Jackson. I know a lot of American history, but he's not one of the guys that I've spent much time studying. General Lafayette visited the Hermitage. Big facility. Wow. Fancy. I'm headed up the hill to the mansion. There's a half an hour tour that I'm going to take. There is Andrew Jackson's mansion. Back porch. This house went through 3 iterations. Actually burned during Jackson's lifetime, and he had to rebuild it. And he died here at the age of 78 after serving 2 terms as President of the United States. His wife predeceased him by quite a few years. We're looking at the back of the house. There's 3 bedrooms upstairs. Some magnificent 14 high ceilings downstairs. I think it's 12 feet high upstairs. The columns are actually wood. The building is brick. The front is painted brick. The back is natural. I'm standing in the backyard looking out. He owned over 1,000 acres that he acquired over the years. This is known as Alfred's cabin. There was a slave that was born here and lived his entire life on the property by the name of Alfred. There's actually pictures of him. He was still alive when the Hermitage became a museum. So he was on the grounds of the property and lived here his entire life and died here. This is the outside of Alfred's cabin. Some wild turkeys walking around the property. The Hermitage was actually a large cotton plantation, and Jackson owned over 150 slaves to run the plantation. So this is the farmhouse where Jackson originally lived, and he later converted it to a slave quarters when the mansion was built. This is the farmhouse. I'm standing next to the farmhouse, looking back towards the mansion and Alfred's
home is there in front. So the two-story log farmhouse was built between 1798 and 1800. Andrew Jackson made his name by the battle down in New Orleans that he won, and that started his national reputation and ultimately led to him becoming President of the United States. This is the garden next to the house. Somewhere out here, Andrew Jackson's buried. This is the slave that lived on Andrew Jackson's grounds from birth to death. And he asked that he get buried next to the President of the United States. They actually did that. Over here, that's where the President of the United States was buried. I'm again towards the front of the house. You can see the painted brick. And the wing over here is his office.
So that was Jackson's Hermitage. Now it's on to Fort Donelson. It's almost noontime. It's a couple-hour ride. Well, that's an interesting exit. That river is running over its banks. Still in Tennessee, 74 miles to go. Fort Donelson, hour and a half till afternoon. I refueled, put a layer on, and I've got about an hour plus a few minutes to get to Fort Donelson. Still a little on the chilly side, 67 degrees. What a change from Alabama, Florida, Georgia. Yeah, the river's pretty swollen. See how the trees are underwater. Shit, looks like I have a crossover here coming up. Here's a spring furnace. Huh. That's interesting. Fort Donelson National Battlefield. Looks like they're redoing the visitor center. So this battle took place in February 1862 and was what made General Grant famous. There were three forts, Hyman and Henry, that were on the Tennessee River that are west of here, Donelson, which is where I am located. And they both protect, both sets of forts protect, one protects the Tennessee River and the other protects the Cumberland River. These two flow into the Ohio River, which flow into the Mississippi. And as with other battle sites, oftentimes the rivers are important because they provide access to cities that are located nearby, in this case in Tennessee. So gunboats originally took Hyman and Henry. They were fairly lightly defended. The gunboats then went downriver, which was actually going north in this instance. They went east a little bit where the Ohio is, and then came back upriver on the Cumberland River to try to do the same thing and reduce Fort Donelson, but were unsuccessful. As a result of that, Grant and his troops came in, basically surrounded the city, and early in the day of the battle, the Confederates started to win and push back the lines, and that was partly because of the fact that Grant was actually not at the battlefield site because he had a meeting that he was attending. When he came back in the afternoon, with his leadership and some mistakes on the side of the Confederacy, they were able to turn the tables and again seal off Fort Donelson. And the commander of Fort Donelson. There were actually three generals here. Two of them got on a riverboat and left on the Confederate side, and the third general, Buckner, stayed, realized the predicament that he was in because he was basically being surrounded by the Union forces, and asked the terms of surrender, and General Grant in his reply and indicated that he would accept nothing other than unconditional surrender. So Ulysses S. Grant became Unconditional Surrender Grant, using the same letters, and so that started his popularity within the Union, and ultimately led to him a couple of years later becoming the commander of of all Union forces. So we're going to take a tour of the Fort Donelson area. There's actually quite a few stops. It's a relatively small park, so I don't have to do a lot of driving or riding. We're here at the Visitor Center. We're going to go up through, and then there's actually some locations outside kind of the main part of the park, including the Dover Hotel, which is the surrender house, where Buckner surrendered to General Grant. And what was interesting is that Buckner and Grant, before the war, were actually very good friends. They were on opposing sides. At the end of the day, years after the surrender, shortly before Grant died, they reconciled, which made national news. And during Grant's funeral, Buckner ended up being one of the casket bearers for General Grant's casket. And then there's the National Cemetery. So here we go. This is a Confederate monument. Looks awfully nice. I think I'll stop. Consistent with other battle sites, because they had fought against the United States, Confederate dead were not reburied in the National Cemetery. This monument was erected by the United Daughters of the Confederacy. This shaft is dedicated as an altar of remembrance to the Confederate soldiers who fought at Fort Donelson, February 1862. The mounds of earth you see before you are the remains of Fort Donelson, which originally covered 15 acres. Confederate soldiers and enslaved African Americans built the fort over a period of 7 months. The walls, made of logs and earth, stood 10 feet tall. The reconstructed log hut in front of you represents approximately 400 huts built for the fort's garrison by soldiers and slave laborers as living quarters. Some 100 of them, of the 400, inside the 15-acre fort. You can see the flooding that's taking place here, and look at all the debris moving down the river. Again, the attack by the Union gunboats was not successful, which is why Grant had to bring his men in to encircle the fort and force the surrender. What's interesting here is it says, if you look out in the distance, you can see the Cumberland River bend. It bends over to the right, way off in the distance there where the trees are. On February 14th, 1862, Flag Officer Andrew Foote's Union gunboat flotilla rounded the bend in the distance and steamed up the Cumberland in this direction to exchange with the batteries here on shore. The cumbersome vessels, however, moved so slowly that they became excellent targets for the untested Confederate artillerymen and were forced to withdraw. The Confederate outer defenses in February 1862 formed a 3-mile broken line around Fort Donelson and Dover. Confederates cut trees in front of the entrenchments to construct an abatis, a formidable obstacle to the enemy. Field artillery batteries took commanding positions along the ridges. It's crazy that this stuff still exists after 160 years. Here is the Dover Hotel, where the Confederates surrendered to General Grant. The building is original. The artifacts inside, hopefully I'll take a look here in a minute, are reproductions built between 1851 and 1853. This hotel accommodated riverboat travelers before and after the Civil War. Confederate General Buckner and his staff used the hotel as their headquarters during the battle. After Buckner accepted what he called Grant's ungenerous and unchivalrous terms of surrender, the two generals met here to work out the details. The conversation was friendly. They had been friends before the war and students together at West Point, the military academy. Grant conveyed his respect for his opponent's ability, while Buckner bore the defeat with dignity. After the war, they would renew their friendship. Buckner would become governor of Kentucky. I did not know that, and Grant the 18th president of the United States. Grant's letter to Confederate General Buckner, quote, "No terms except unconditional and immediate surrender can be accepted," close quote. This is a recreation of what it looked like in the lobby of the hotel where the surrender was tendered and accepted. So the end result, Fort Donelson was held by the Union. 13,000 Confederate prisoners were taken. They were shipped by steamboats out of this area here up into Illinois, and from there they were moved by rail, some as far as away as Massachusetts, but most of them by September of 1862. Remember, this battle took place in February of 1862. By September, most of the Confederate prisoners had been exchanged for Union prisoners. That practice got discontinued later in the war. So concludes my sightseeing on day 18. It's 3:37 in the afternoon. There's a grocery store only a few minutes away. So I'm going to stop and get groceries. And then I've got about a 45-minute ride up to the state park in Kentucky. Fortunately, there's no grocery stores close to where I'm going, so I got to pick them up here. Land Between the Lakes has group camping, individual camping, I think backwoods camping for the hikers. And they have what they call Wrangler's Camp, which is a campground for people that are interested in equestrian. Great Western Furnace. I passed one of these earlier today. This looks like kind of the same design. For more than a century, from 1820 to 1927, Stewart County, Tennessee was an active industrial iron producer in an agricultural South. The ruins of this limestone slab furnace are all that is left. Once 18 such iron manufacturing centers existed in the county. Great Western operated for just one 34-week period in 1855-56 and produced 1,350 tons of high-quality iron. So how do they work? Charcoal, hematite ore, and limestone needed to make iron were carted by hand over the bridge and dumped into the ore box. Great Western Furnace was 10 feet wide by 40 feet high inside. Temperatures in the ore box reached 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and once the ore was melted, a plug was removed at the bottom of the ore box and the molten iron flowed into sand molds to cool. That must be where they let the ore come pouring out. This is one quiet roadway. Every once in a while a car will pass heading south or east. I think I'm heading mostly northwest. Here we are. Is that Kentucky? Welcome to Kentucky. Unbridled spirit. Last time I was in Kentucky, I was finishing the tour of the lower 48 states. I'm gonna have to look up how big this Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area is. It's gigantic. I'm still in it, but it's 4:41, so I've been running 40 minutes in it, and a pretty good, rate of speed. Here is the westernmost lake. Pretty good size. I suspect these are dammed, especially given their size. Ken Lake Campground. Campground, oh, this is open. Arrived. Not quite as level as I was hoping it would be. Maybe I can set up here, assuming that nobody comes into 85. But I'll do is put it right next to the pad here.
It's 5:30. Come to camp. Might set up to let some of my clothes dry. I hand washed a day or so ago that had been slow to dry. For dinner I got canned stew, Cobb salad, Hawaiian sweet rolls, sweet tea and lemonade, banana, carrot cake for dessert. I got some milk somewhere. I'm hiding it from the sun so that I'm still in the sun here. It's a little bit warm. It's actually really good to have a hot dinner after a few days of cold dinners. The canned stew is actually pretty good. It heats up in a hurry. You heat it up in probably 3-4 minutes.
So that concludes day 18. Tomorrow I did get a reservation at Mammoth Caves for one of the guided tours. I'm looking forward to that. It's about a 2.5 hour ride, and my reservation is for 12:30, I believe. So I've got basically all morning to be able to get over there. And then after that 2-hour tour, I've got about another hour ahead of me of riding in order to get to the state park in Kentucky.